Welcome back to the Worldbuilding Shrimp. Let's talk about elves. Elves have been around in folklore and mythology for over 1,000 years. Back then, elves were very different from how we consider them in our modern view. They took many shapes and sizes. While the modern elves are seen as a tall and fair race, they were also at a time considered to be small, mischievous spirits. They were written of inside the collection of Icelandic folklore called the Eddas, both compiled in the 1200s. These are a prominent source of Norse mythology. Elves had all sorts of things attributed to them, like nightmares, illnesses, and stealing children to replace them with a changeling. The last one might sound familiar, as it is something that fairies were thought to do. At one point, the term fairy, elf, dwarf, imp, or brownie all could refer to the same idea. Not to say they were always interchangeable, but they were such similar concepts that they were often merged together. Also, elves were blamed for hiccups. Babies born with birthmarks or deformities were called elf-marked. When the hair on a person or a horse was tangled or knotted, these were called elf locks. Like those little pranksters just delighted in messing up hair. Often, they were seen as tiny shapeshifters that were known for pranks and general mischief. They were, however, thought to be neutrally aligned, ambivalent rather than outwardly good or bad, capable of both helping and hindering. While seen as the cause of human illnesses, they also had the power to heal them. If you made offerings to them, such as butter, they were far more inclined towards benevolence. In Norse mythology, where they were seen as more humanoid, they were split into light elves and dark elves. Light elves were associated with beautiful qualities, while the dark elves were smaller, less beautiful, and lived underground. They were not inherently seen as good or evil, allowing for the nuances of individuals and not representing an entire group under one morality. However, interpretations later down the line, as well as the blending of mythologies, saw light elves as good and dark elves as bad. The elves of Icelandic folklore, known as the Huldufolk, the hidden people, are particularly inspiring to me. Supernatural beings that looked and behaved similarly to humans but lived in a parallel world. They had the magic of invisibility, so some Icelandic folktales cautioned against throwing stones, as you could hit the hidden people without knowing it. That kind of belief has so much potential. I'm going to use it. I collected some terms relating to the elves of folklore so I could name mine. Alfheim, Alfar, Aesir, Elf. Do you know where our modern term of elf comes from? Old English elf and Germanic alp, which means nightmare. So, that's enough research for me. But before we get started, I do want to preface that I love what Tolkien did for the modern interpretation of elves. Elf has always been one of my favorite fantasy races. I just want to do something different with them for my world. I do love my pointy-eared races and have plenty of them. I will never stop drawing characters with long ears. Let's redesign some elves. Like the light and dark elves, I will split my elves into two types. Those who follow their purpose and those who don't. The ones that follow their purpose are called the alake. The ones that follow their own purposes are called the alehidden. I'll go over the basic concepts first. The Ale fall under a race of spirits that do not have a solid form. Their origin is the etheric realm of Manuvria. The whispers of Etherin and the shards of Avake, something I will have to get into another time, took the basic beings of Manuvria and nurtured them to suit their purposes. Manuvrians are an energy race that are basically soul-based mist, contained inside of a husk. Their outer form is merely a container, a shell that keeps their mist safe. When their shell is damaged, the mist can be stolen. As a race of Manuvrians, the Alvake are shapeshifters in the truest sense of the word. They can alter the shape of their outer shell whenever they like. They can mimic anything on the surface. All of their senses are soul-related. They don't see as other races do, since their eyes, if they have them, are merely ornamental. They have no sense of smell, as any nose they might display does not contain olfactory sensors. They have no sense of hearing, no ears that report back to them. Their main sense is the mind field, but the mind field gives a lot of information. The mind field is a map of living things around them. They can tell the strength of a mind and its location. They can communicate through it and navigate by it. Strong minds can mask their presence and power. Their other sense is touch. If anything comes into contact with their shell, they do feel it. In order to mimic something, they must have indwelled it first. Indwelling means they forego their shell and use a physical thing as their container instead. They do not have to succeed this inhabitation to learn to mimic it, but the longer they have indwelled, the more accurately they can masquerade. For example, exact colors, blemishes, posture, mannerisms, and voice. This also includes movement of the eyes towards others, breathing, and blinking. They can mimic things they haven't possessed, but it's either going to look incorrect or uncanny. They are only shells, and they are not built for this dimension. Their bodies are not affected by gravity, as inside their shell they weigh nothing. So they must compensate for that, mimicking even the weight if they want their disguise to work. The longer they indwell, the more they themselves can be altered towards the mannerisms of their host, even after leaving them, which helps them subconsciously uphold their disguises. When it comes to speech, it is quite complicated to shift your husk into a manner that is capable of producing noise, to capture air and force it through both throat and mouth. Less intelligent, less experienced maneuverians cannot talk with their husk, but only with their mind. I'm realizing now that when it comes time to make a video on the realms of Aetherin, I'm going to be repeating a lot of this maneuvering information. Oh well, maybe it'll be more refined by then. So, what are the Elves? We've gone over their basic form, but what the heck are they? What do they do? What's the deal with their supposed purpose? Without going too deep into it, which may be impossible, but I'll try. The shards of Avake are the governing powers of the planet, rooted presences that connect to Aetherin. They are responsible for maintaining the cycle of the world, which provides magical energy and keeps the Avake satisfied. This cycle is the entire backbone of the workings of the planet. If the cycle isn't maintained, everything will go into chaos. The entire point of magic in the planet is that the Avake have a place to live and be satisfied. They are immortal, ever-present beings, and they need to be around their resonant essences. An essence is something like fire, warmth, cold, happiness, flowing water, death, growth, change. Each Avake has their resonant essence they want to commune with, and if they don't, they explode. They cause physical and mental damage and poison every living thing around them. To prevent this, they just have to experience their essence, and they are satisfied for a period of time. And when an Avake communes with their essence, they create magical energy. Well, they don't actually create it, they just siphon it from Aetherin. It's a cycle of keeping the Avake satisfied, and in return, gaining the numen needed for magic. So, what are the Elves' role in the cycle? The Elves are a sort of second order of servants to the shards. The first order are the chosen holders of a shard. This position is usually held by a person, but it's been known to have a magical creature or even an animal become a chosen holder. They uphold their own shard cycle from within their specific shard field. While the Elves are not as powerful as a chosen holder, they can move freely around the entire planet, something the chosen cannot do. They are primarily watchers and messengers. They keep an eye on the world and report back to their masters. They are extremely adept at their charge of spying on the world, able to change their size and their shape into whatever is necessary. They are the hidden folk. They disappear into the background of the world. Do not throw stones, as you may hit a messenger. What's in it for the Aelvig? I mentioned that some Ale reject their purpose. They have the free will to do so. The Aelvig benefit from their partnership under the shards. In exchange for their work, they are given the energy needed not only to survive, but thrive. In their home realm of Manuvria, the only way to advance is to eat others. They grow in size by devouring each other's myths. From the bottom of the food chain to the top. Here on Alwayn, in service to the shards, they do not fear for their lives every moment. They do their work and are rewarded well with energy to live and to grow. So why do the shards need the Aelvig? It's tough work to maintain the cycle. Everything of Aetherin came from chaos. They know well its strength. The Aelvig monitor their shard fields, ensuring that every Aveki within is being taken care of, that they are not being mistreated or taken advantage of, that those who do such things will be remembered and dealt with. Each shard has its own area of the world that they rule over. Only the Shard of Life has domain over the entire planet, and she cannot maintain all by herself. In order to maintain information and communication, the Aelvig travel from field to field, bearing the necessary intel to the shards, or their followers. The Aelvig have another job, escorting people to where they need to go. Whether escorting people to altars to offer essences, a chosen holder to an individual or group who have mistreated the Aveki, or to a Dwervig. They are Manuvrians like the Aelvig, and their service to the shards is in enchanting. The Ale lead those in need of certain magic, as well as those who carry said magic, to the hidden home of a Dwervig, so that the needed affinity to create a specific essence can be duplicated. The blueprint of magic copied from one and imbued into an object or person to create an Eth key. What about those that reject their purpose? What of the Ale that do not work for the shards? The Aelhidden are not actually different from the Aelvig, but since they are not beholden to shards, they do not get a steady supply of energy. They must source this for themselves. People are more wary of the Aelhidden than they are the Aelvig, as they are not governed by anything but their own desires. They do not answer to a higher power. The Aelhidden can be a danger to people. They are the small beings in the dark that you must watch out for. They may pretend to be Aelvig in order to win trust in exchange for energy, or to lure the trusting into becoming a host or a meal. As a type of Manuvria with a strong soul, most Aelhidden have the potential to indwell without consent. Those who are at most risk to this are children, the elderly, those with any injury or sickness, and those without any social ties. There are many incentives for an Aelhidden to indwell a physical body. It offers far more protection than their shell can provide them, and the body makes its own energy that they can utilize. In addition to being used as sustenance, they can also use it for magic. Sometimes, when an Aelhidden has indwelled a being, it may pick up the host's affinity. What is an affinity? It is to possess the ability to manipulate or create a certain essence. An affinity for heat, an affinity for language, an affinity for joining things together. While the Ale can pick up an affinity from indwelling, they do not routinely utilize them. To use magic, the Ale would basically be using their own life and body, consuming part of their mist as fuel for the magic. As such, it is used sparingly by Manuvrians, in defense of their lives, or for securing enough energy that such a cost is worthwhile. A great appeal of indwelling a living being is that if their mind is strong enough to suppress the mind of their host, they can utilize their learned affinity by leeching the body's energy and not their own. There are also reasons to avoid indwelling, like friends and family of your host not taking kindly to your possession and having you exterminated. Some Aelhidden forego the soul entirely and stick with animals as hosts. Not only are they easier to take over, they do not possess the means to evict the ale from their body. There are also magically inclined animals that they can use magic through. But indwelling does not have to be a bad thing. Both parties can benefit from such a possession. This is consensual indwelling, called an impact. The Alhiden profits from having a safe refuge inside their body and access to a steady supply of energy. The pact host gains access to the mind field and, potentially, any affinity that the Alhiden has picked up. They also gain an incredibly useful ally, watching their back, watching their enemies, unseen, unheard, loyal to the one who gives them protection, food, and a home. The loyalty of an Alhiden is usually to those who offer them the most benefit. But even so, betrayals of this nature are uncommon. The benefits of a lasting relationship usually outweigh the temptations of instant gratification. There is no guarantee that those offering more will actually be a better host in the long run. Treat your Alhiden well, or they might seek better, after taking as much from you as possible on their way out. That's all we can get into the ale for now. For more information regarding their lifespan, reproduction, and what happens when they die, that'll have to wait until the Maneuvria video. Remember that the first time you do something, you don't have to do it well. Give it time and effort, and you'll get it. Do not be afraid to fail.